Hi, welcome to the next training. Today's topic for training is text and text identifiers. In this we'll be learning how you can make certain text as a default on the basis of defining certain ID or a certain code for number of transactions, where you just need to select those codes or those ID part, and the narration or the text will automatically gets populated if the text is repeatedly being the same. So in today's topic we'll be covering the above three configuration steps for looking after how the text can be used for various transaction purposes. First is define text IDs for documents. Second, define text identifications for line items. And third, define text for line items. These are three different configuration steps used in various transactions. You can use in all of the transactions at different places within different transactions. So we'll see how this has been done. So if you move on to the first transaction, that is define text IDs for documents. Basically in this activity you define the text IDs for long text at document header level. When entering a document, you can enter text for every text IDs. This means that you can store information on the document that affects the whole document. So it particularly in this case, what you can do is you can maintain text at the document header. Document header means that represents the text for the whole document or whole transaction. So by now you must be knowing what is a document header and what are the line items. The document header is the header of the document, which represents the posting date, document date, then posting keys, transaction, fiscal year, and these. In the same part there is a text option for the document header part, which can be maintained in this. So how you can do that in the SAP system, we'll look after to that in the system. Let's move on to the SAP screen. So to move on to these configuration steps, as you can see we are on the screen of SAP Easy Access. So to move on to define text IDs for documents, we first need to go to the path. So for that, executing SPRO. So we can take SPRO over here, enter. It will take you to the next stage, to the path. Now click on to SAP reference IMG and it will take you to the IMG guide. So now we can move up to financial accounting, new, expand. Within that we need to go to financial accounting global settings, expand, and then we need to go to documents, expand, and in this document option you will find below text and text identifiers for documents. So if you expand this text and text identifiers over here, you will find the three steps which is being taken up in text and text identifier for documents. So if you move up to the first part, let's execute this first step, define text IDs for documents. As I executed it, you can see on the screen. So the screen basically have certain standard SAP standard delivered text IDs, as you can see. The first correspondence, then note, payment advice information, and remark EBPP. These four IDs are provided by SAP as a default setting. So you can use these settings for your purpose, or you can define your new IDs for documents as well. So the ID is created across the company, across the system. So whatever ID which you define over here on the system is applicable for the whole client. Now the whole client basically refers to whatever IDs you will be defining over here or are already defined are used for all the company codes present in this particular system. So you can see even in the below footnote, the caution message is generated over there. The table is cross client. Cross client means it is whatever you will be doing over here in this step will have an impact on the client, that is on all the company codes in the system. So either we can use these different IDs which are represented on the screen, or you can define your own ID as well. So to define your own other ID is you need to go to the option over here on the header, create, and there is a delete option, so as to delete any IDs if you want that they are not required. So you can go to new, or you can go to this create option, click on to create. So as you click on to create, it will take you to the next tab, and that's what you can see over here. The next tab has been generated, or a next box been generated over here on your screen. Now in this you need to put the text ID. The text ID could be a 4-character ID, it could be alphanumeric, and then you can give the meaning to it. So suppose the ID we want to take up is Z0001, and you can put the meaning to it. Suppose I take it as text. That's it. So I take it as text, and now I can go and select onto this continue option, and you can see this has been added up over here. So you can add a new ID in the same way, and one thing you need to take care that there is a checkbox over here, relevant text. So you must need to select this tab. Now if you will not select this particular ID will not be reflected to you, or will not be displayed to you in the transactions if you want to choose it. So if you want this particular ID to be relevant, to be displayed whenever you need it, you need to select this relevant text option. So this is how you can create your text ID for document. So once you have created this text ID over here, later on while posting the transaction, we can go and we can select this ID, and we can maintain the whatever the text or the narration we want to put into it. So this is how you need to create it, and now we can go and we can save this screen. So as you will click onto the save button, so as we clicked onto the save option, a new box been generated. Click OK or enter, and you can see the changes have been made. So this is how you would be maintaining your text ID for the document header level. Now moving on, let's see how this has been impacted at the transaction level. So we want to see whether this configuration is okay or not, whether this will be working fine for the transaction or not. So let's see. Now for that we need to go to a new screen. Let's click on to and open a new screen for it. So as the new screen generated, now we'll be processing the transaction. Suppose I would be executing the transaction FB60 for vendor invoice. Enter. So when I am going to process the transaction, in that now we'll be looking after how this text ID appears. So you can see now the screen for vendor invoices there. The transaction is FB60. Now to populate that text ID over here on the screen, we need to go to extra, and as you click on to extra on the top, you can see over here document, edit, go to, and then there is an extras tab. So as you take the cursor on that particular extra, you will find 3 options: error log, trading partner, and document text. So you need to go to this document text, and you need to click onto that. So as you will click onto that, the system will take you to the same IDs which we had just maintained and have had a look, which were already been there. So as I click onto this document text, Okay, it gives you an error that specify the account number. So let's take an account number. So before processing to that particular extra tab, you need to fill the transaction details on the screen, and once you fill the details on the screen like vendor, invoice date, reference and all, and now you can go and you can click on to the extra options over there, and then you will find the document text option is there. So we need to click on to document text, and as we click, as you can see now on the screen, it will take you to the next tab. So you can see a pop-up screen being generated on in front of you, and you can see these are the same descriptions which we had defined over there. If you want to see, we can go to the over here. Now you can see these are the 4 relevant text which has been checked, and these 4 will only be reflected to you on the transaction level. So that is what been generated and has been displayed to you. As you can see, correspondence, note, payment advice information, these 3 are defined standard defined by SAP, and text is the one which we had defined at our end. So if you want, you can fill anything over here as the first line, and whatever the text you will be maintaining over here now will be the text for that particular accounting document as a whole, or you can say at the document header level, and it could be reflected, the text could be reflected at the accounting document header at the top. So you can fill your text over here on the screen as you wish to. So suppose I maintain the text at the document header level as text, document header text. So this is how you could maintain it. Document header I have taken up as 0001 or 2. This is what I am been maintaining over here for the testing purposes or just to have a check, and you can go and you can click OK and proceed with it. So this is how you would be doing it at your end, and that will become the header of that particular document. So similarly, you can put your header, accounting document header text with the help of the IDs as we did in defining the text IDs for the document. Now moving on to the second step, second config now. So this is how the first one has been done, and this is how you would be doing your text ID for document. Now moving to the second is define text identification for line items. Now in this part, as the line item has been concerned, we define the text identification for long text at line item level. So if you have done the transactions like FB50, 60 or FB70 for customer invoices or vendor invoices and all, you must have seen that there is an option of long text next to the text part where you can maintain long text. The long text could be long enough where you can write all the summaries or the narrations to whatever long it may be. So you need to when you enter a document, you enter the text for each text identification, thereby defining information that concerns the line items in the document. So over here in this step, we can maintain long text for that particular line item of the document. So again, if the long text is similar for number of different transactions on a daily basis, you can again make an identification for that, and the same identification can be taken up in the long text again and again, and this is as you will put that particular identification, the long text descriptions will be fetched from the backend by the system itself. So you can also do the same thing over here. So the text identification again are created for the whole system. That is, again, it is the code which you create or the identification which we define at line item over here in this step is for the whole company code, for all the company codes within the client, because this is at the client level. So how we can do that, again this part we'll be going through that. So we can move on to the next step as in the SAP system to text identification. So you can see now the very next is define text identification for line items. So as you will click onto this, you will find now that there is one ID already defined, and that is a SAP standard provided identity uh, as notes 0001 notes. So similar to that, you can create your own 4-character code or 4-character code for the text identification for long text in the screen. So if you want to have that, again there is a relevant text option at the end which you need to select, and when you select this, then only that particular ID will be reflected to you in the transaction. So let's see how we can create the same process. We can go to the create option on the header at the top, you can see, and you can click on to new or create, and then you can create over here. Suppose there was 0001 is already there, so I am creating 002 now, and this is for the long text. So now I will be maintaining over here long text. So as I have taken long text for the line item Z002, and again you can go and you can continue, click on to the continue or the right tick or enter on the screen, and it will be added. So similarly, very simple, you need to go to create, and you can create multiple IDs as per requirement, and then it will be created. Now once you have defined this ID, you need to select this relevant text checkbox as well. If you miss this checkbox, again the same thing, the particular ID will not be reflected to you at the transaction level. So this is what you need to do. Once you have defined this ID, you need to go and have to save this screen. So as you save, it will be saved in the request number. So this is how you would be doing it. Now moving on to the transaction level now in the screen, as you can see. So you will find over here there is an option of long text very next to text. So the same screen, vendor invoice. The second one is long text. So in the long text, you can see over here next to amount in text, there is option over here of long text. As you can see the message, there is a pencil mark, and if you take it on the larger part, you will find this is the long text. You can click onto the symbol. Okay, it says you need. So you can now click onto this long text, and as we click onto the long text, enter. Okay, there's a transaction field missing, so let's fill the cost center, and now we can go back to our long text. So you will find the long text over here, click onto it, enter, and now you can see that the long text has been generated on the screen to you. So I think it will be let's see once again how it can be done so as to avoid confusion. You just have to go, this is the line item against which I want to write certain long text. So you need to follow the same line item fields further, and you will find a long text. So very next to text is long text over here. So you can see this long text, click onto it, and you can see a message has been generated. Enter on the screen, and it will take you to the long text tab. So as you can see in the long text, there are two IDs now. Sorry, there are two IDs being generated, as you can see over here. One is for notes and another is for long text. The notes is the one which is already defined by the SAP. Now we need to go for long text, the second one which we just have defined over there, and now we can write the long text over here as you wish. So whatever you wish to write, you can write it in the long text part on the screen, and that is what will be taken up. So as much as you want, you can write it over there on the screen to it, and then it will be taken up. So once you have written all these long text, you can go and you can click on to copy continue, and that is it. This is how the long text will be maintained. So that is what you would be doing it over here on this particular part. So this is how you can maintain the long text for the screen. You can see now the line item 001 must be corrected. That's a different error, but the long text can be maintained with the long text field over here. So that is what we just have maintained, as you can see again on the screen. So it's up to you whether you want to maintain it on the notes ID part or you want to maintain it for the long text ID part, and you need to select this. Okay, and that will be taken up. So this is how you would be maintaining the second step, that is maintaining identification for the line item. So now we'll be moving up to the third step, that is define text for line items. Now as far as the text for line item is concerned, again in this you will be maintaining the text ID for the line item. So what the system does in this case is that you don't have to write the text every time over here. As we will go and click onto the list of different IDs on the text, or F4 key on the keyboard, you will find the IDs already defined over here on the screen. So if I take AAAA, the text rent for Waldorf storage building will be taken up. If I take the sign as plus, it will take as the last text. If I take it as 0001, it will take substitute text. If I take the text ID as 1000, the system will take payroll posting for the period. So whatever you want, you can take it over here on the screen. So similarly you can also do it. How you can also define your own ID for the text part. How that can be done, we'll see that in the config. So let's move back to the next step. So we have covered the text IDs for document, then we have seen the define text identification for line items, and now define text for line item. Executing, and as I have executed, you can see over here the same IDs which we have just shown the transaction has been maintained over here. So if you want to maintain the new line item text template, you can go to new entry and you can create your own. Suppose I create it as Z005 and I take it over here as, so suppose I maintain the ID over here as Z005 as vendor invoice, and then I select it over here as control display, so that the ID will be displayed to you when you will be selecting the text ID. And then you can go and click onto the save option and the configuration will be saved. So once you have done this, we can go back and now we can go to the transaction FB60. So if you go back again to the transaction now, select the vendor, we need to select these different fields for the transaction. Now we can go to text and you can click onto the F4 key on the keyboard and it will show you the list of IDs. So you can see over there on the screen, and in that you can find your own ID being created, that is Z004. So similarly it happens at times that there are certain text which we always write number of times in the same day. So instead of writing those text, you can maintain an ID and you can select that ID, or if you remember the ID code, you can directly type that ID over here on the screen as the same ID, but it has to be a prefix as equal to, and the system will automatically take the text or the narration of it from it. So that is what you would be doing it over here on the screen. So now you can see that the vendor text has already been taken up. So similarly you can also do it. Suppose I take it as equal to Z005, and as I will enter, this ID will take the text from where we have configured the text part or the description part of the ID. Entered, and you can see now the text has been taken up. So this is how you can also create it, and if you remember the ID, you don't need to write it again and again, and it will save certain amount of time of yours. So this is how the text can be maintained. The different text IDs and identification you can create, it depends whether you want it for the document header level, or you need it for long items or long text, and whether you need it for the line items. Similarly, you can create for all of them different IDs, different number of text descriptions can be maintained, and if they are long enough, they will save your time by just having that particular ID placed over there, and as you will enter, the ID will be overtaken by the description of the ID. So this is how the text and the text identifier for documents work within the SAP system, and I hope you would be going through the same and you will be testing it. It will be found very much helpful to you. So that is it in the text and text identifier for documents part, and now we'll be looking after in the next topic to you very soon. Till then, practice it and take care. Thank you. Have a nice day.